Norris has attacked headquarters.
Norris? And where is he now? Norris! As usual, a dramatic entrance.
Hello and welcome to Cinecrisis. The 1980s were a time of change in the animation industry that brought about a multitude of new ideas and concepts to the airwaves, mostly based on toys and action figure lines. Everything was about brand recognition and cross-promotion. A cartoon show could sell toys and vice versa, and if you didn't have a pre-existing toy line, you could sell one based on a show. If you needed name recognition for either the show or the toys, then tack on a hot celebrity, and bam, you have an instant hit. Enter Ruby Spears, essentially a spin-off studio of Hanna-Barbera Productions. Founded in 1977 by its namesakes Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, the duo were an integral part of Hanna-Barbera nearly since its inception, indeed having developed some of the studio's most important shows in the 60s and 70s, most notably Scooby-Doo, before later departing and forming their own animation house. In 1983, the studio had a big hit with the Saturday morning animated adventures of Mr. T. The series paired the action star of the A-Team with a group of young gymnasts who traveled the world solving mysteries in a very Scooby-Doo style manner. And while Mr. T provided his own voice for the show,
catch the action, catch the mystery. On my show, the best show, Mr. T.
He also appeared in short live-action segments that bookended the episodes. This not only provided the setup for the story, but an inspirational public service announcement for the kids as well.
Listen up, people. This is Mr. T talking to you. Ever feel like giving up on something? Like it's the only way to solve a problem?
The series ran for 3 seasons and 30 episodes in total until 1985. So with that feather in their cap, Ruby Spears tried to get lightning to strike twice. And in 1986, they launched CHUCK NORRIS, Karate Kommandos. The concept was based on the Kenner toy line of the same name. Perhaps what I love most about CHUCK NORRIS Karate Kommandos is the opening theme song, which outlines the show and its characters. The narration is like a punch in the face by how fiercely epic it is. I'm going to play it now so you can get a sense of how amazing it is, and count along with me how many times they say Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris, man of action. Chuck Norris stars in Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos. Chuck Norris, he's got nerves of steel and strength to match. Chuck Norris with his team, Pepper.
It's too dangerous, Chuck. Wow.
Too much.
Too much.
Kemo, the samurai warrior. Reed, Chuck's teenage apprentice. Tabi, the sumo champion. With Chuck Norris, they battle the sinister forces of the Claw.
Remember this.
And the ruthless Super Ninja.
I'll finish Norris!
Chuck Norris stars in Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos.
Yes, technically the full name Chuck Norris is spoken 9 times, and if you include other characters saying Chuck or Norris, that's 10.5 times in total. The premise of the show is genius in its simplicity. Chuck Norris is the leader of a group of government operatives who specialize in special missions only they can handle. Each member of the team is an expert in their field of martial arts, kung fu, sumo wrestling, or whatever. Their mission is to stop the machinations of the Deadly Claw and his terrorist organization, Vulture. Interestingly, the name Vulture does not appear to ever be mentioned in the actual series, but is referenced online in many articles. Before we go any further, does any of this sound familiar? Well, it should. Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos is very much a mishmash of many popular 1980s cartoon tropes, all blended together with a Chuck Norris cherry on top. The general idea, while not unique in any right, feels awfully similar to the very successful G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero series, which premiered in 1983. Between the ragtag group of heroic specialists, a terrorist organization bent on world domination, and even the opening title explanation of the plot, it's hard to imagine they weren't aiming for that G.I. Joe magic. As for the Claw himself, that character seems almost lifted entirely from another very popular 1983 cartoon series, Inspector Gadget, whose primary antagonist was the shadowy Dr. Claw. Regarding the other characters, where do we even start? This show is overflowing with excess and unneeded characters, most of whom we never get even the slightest hint of characterization. This is an 80s cartoon after all, so we're thrown into the heat of the action of a well-oiled, experienced group. That's perfectly fine by me, but given the sheer number of characters at play here and the frantic breakneck pace of the show, it's hard to get a handle on who these people are or why they're even there. Some of them for sure could have been cut entirely, and seemed like they needed to be included just to fulfill the obligation to the toy company. Really, for the heroes, there are two tiers of characters. The top tier of Chuck, Too Much, and Tabi, the show writers clearly adored and used to their maximum potential. The second tier includes brother and sister Pepper and Reed, as well as Kemo, the samurai warrior, who get far less to do per episode. Let's break down the characters in more detail.
Chuck Norris.
Our series hero, Chuck Norris, is generic action guy. Chuck obviously provides his own voice for the show. He has no personality, no flavor, no charisma. He's just plain Chuck straight up all the way.
We'll find out. We've got a source of information right here. Claw's people are using Sanford's knowledge of C-Lab so they can get in C-Lab and take over the place.
Also, you have to give credit to the animators for placing the character in a variety of different outfits during the show's short runtime, which is a rarity for cartoons like these on limited budgets. In the first episode alone, Chuck changes his clothes at least 4 times, which is quite impressive. Then I realized there was a much more cynical explanation to the whole affair. See, there are 3 different Chuck Norris action figures produced to tie into the series that needed to be captured on screen. Talk about amazing cross-product synergy.
Too much.
Too Much is Chuck's ward. I guess wards were still an in vogue concept in the 80s. Clearly someone saw Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom and loved the character of Short Round and wanted to give Chuck a sidekick in that style. If you couldn't tell, Too Much has only a few important roles to fulfill in the series. He's there to get kidnapped,
Enough of you!
and to shout the trademark expression that gives him his name.
Too much! Too much!
He's voiced by Mona Marshall, who later went on to provide ancillary voices in South Park and a large number of anime series.
Tabi, the sumo champion.
Definitely the clear favorite secondary character of the writers, Tabi's presence in the series is as large as his body habitus. He's given a large amount of screen time in every episode and actually participates in a majority of the action. And unlike most of the other characters, he's imbued with at least a hint of personality and distinction. I just find it very unnerving that he goes around half naked in a diaper all the time. Also, did you know that he's fat and obsessed with food?
This is good. My compliments to the chefs. I think my appetite is coming back. That reminds me, lunch.
Tabi is voiced by Robert Ito, who played Sam Fujiyama on the medical investigator series Quincy, M.E.
Gentlemen, we're about to enter the fascinating sphere of police work, the world of forensic medicine.
Ah, Quincy. Now that's a great show that I'd love to talk about sometime.
Pepper.
It's too dangerous, Chuck.
Pepper has to be the most useless character in the show. Was she included just so they'd have a girl on board to keep the boys in check? I have no idea. She'll randomly drive people around and help out with menial tasks, but otherwise she could have been cut altogether with no difference noted. The only thing interesting about her is that her voice is provided by Kathy Garver, who also gave life to Firestar on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
I can't hold the nitrogen off much longer. It's eating through my heat shield. The ice. I'm losing power. I'll crystallize.
Reed, Chuck's teenage apprentice.
Reed has basically only 3 aspects to his character. 1, he's Chuck's teenage apprentice. We know this because the intro narration tells us so, and not by anything that is said or done in the series. 2, he's Pepper's brother, mentioned only in 1 instance in passing dialogue. And 3, he looks like a total idiot with that outfit on. He's voiced by Sam Fontana.
Kemo, the samurai warrior.
A legit character with some potential, Kemo is ultimately outshined by Tabi as the sidekick with martial arts skills. He barely has anything to do in the show, but will occasionally get 1 or 2 moments of action per episode, if even. Kemo's voice is provided by Alan Oppenheimer, who also voiced Skeletor on Masters of the Universe, among many other cartoon characters in his career.
I've done it! I have triumphed at last!
Next, we move to the villains. We've already touched on the Claw, who is the primary antagonist for the show.
Make sure you show Mr. Norris every consideration before you kill him.
The Claw is a pretty standard diabolical mastermind who engages in all your classic acts of villainy. He loves to show dominance by using his mechanical claw to threaten everyone, including his minions, who he clearly loathes and has contempt for. He's voiced by Bill Martin, who was one of the many voices of Shredder on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and much more interestingly, a songwriter who wrote several deep-cut hits for the Monkees, including All of Your Toys and The Door into Summer.
That's it. Come to me, Norris.
The far more entertaining villain of the show is the Claw's henchman, Super Ninja, and you have to wonder what this guy's deal is.
I'll finish Norris! I've told you that.
Yes, you have.
With a voice provided by Keon Young, he accentuates his words in the most hilarious way possible, so it literally always sounds like he's constipated.
Norris! I'm going to give him a lot more than regards!
He also seems to have some kind of psychic link or connection to Chuck Norris.
Norris is around here. I can feel it. I'll know when he's dead.
If this show had been made nowadays, we'd get an entire 8-episode miniseries devoted to the origin of Super Ninja. Is he Chuck's long-lost brother, or some other kind of ridiculous cliche?
I wish I knew for sure.
Maybe it's best that we never know. All in all, only 5 episodes of Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos were created. Was this designed to be a miniseries from its inception? Did the show not take off? Or was Norris himself not interested in doing more? These burning questions will seemingly remain a mystery.
Keep him coming!
Next, we're going to talk about the individual episodes themselves. But before we do, we need to address the live-action Chuck Norris intros that bookend the episodes. Generally, they're the most cookie-cutter, generic PSA advice talks about bullying.
Remember, kids, a bully is no one to be afraid of, because a bully is nothing but a coward.
Listening to your parents.
Like when mom or dad want you to do your homework now and watch TV later. It may seem like nagging, but believe me, you'll thank them for it.
Or staying in school.
The next time things get tough, you mess up on a test or lose the game, don't let it get you down.
Chuck's always in his gym working out and looks like he got distracted by the cameraman. You would think they filmed these all back to back in about 20 minutes, but Norris is always dressed differently for each one, and if you look closely, it seems like the equipment is also moved around. They do have their quirks though, but perhaps most bizarre is Island of the Walking Dead, which features Chuck dressed in what looks like short shorts and a crop top. I know this was the 80s, but come on.
But that's what it takes to be a winner.
Alright, on to the episodes. Number 1, Deadly Dolphin. Yes, that's right, Deadly Dolphin. The premiere episode of the series sets us right in the middle of an adventure. There's no exposition, no introduction to any of the characters or situation. In this alliteratively titled episode, the Claw commandeers a scientific research facility named C-Lab.
I'm taking command of C-Lab.
Anyway, this C-Lab is conducting research on dolphins and tidal waves and has the potential to create massive tsunamis that can destroy coastal cities. The special guest villain is Angelfish, rocking the Veronica Lake hairstyle just like later 80s cartoon villain Dr. Blight from Captain Planet. Clearly there weren't enough characters in this show already because each episode has to introduce additional villains to the series. I thought based on the title that this was going to be something closer to the movie Day of the Dolphin, where hyper-intelligent dolphins are used to carry out malevolent CIA operations, but unfortunately they went in a different, more mundane direction. How and why are these dolphins so deadly, you may ask? Well, they're not, and they're largely inconsequential other than a means for Chuck and Tabi to enter C-Lab. There's a legit decent fight between Chuck and some goons on a steel girder in midair, and the over-the-top vocal effects from some of the henchmen are delightful. Otherwise, this episode epitomizes the sheer randomness and kinetic energy of the show. In episode 2, Target Chuck Norris, the Claw is after the NATO defense computer's memory core, which he plans to hold for ransom. I guess in this universe there's some kind of supercomputer which handles all of NATO's defense capabilities or something. It's not really explained. To hatch his plan, the Claw hires not one but 2 new villains to assist him. See, the Claw's really into subcontracting other villains instead of hiring them directly like Super Ninja. Maybe this way he can avoid having to pay their health insurance or other benefits, I'm not really sure. First is a guy named the Leader who bungles the job in the beginning of the episode and gets unceremoniously executed. Yeah, I'm not kidding.
Claw, please let me try again. I'll do anything.
I don't think so.
So the Claw just brings in a new bad guy named the Imposter, who's a master of disguise. At least in this episode, they do give the Claw some flavor as a villain when they show him sharpening his mechanical claw and disposing of his own minions. Of course, Too Much gets kidnapped in the process of all this, and the team has to get him back and retrieve the NATO memory core, which is pretty standard stuff.
Too much!
Terror Train is episode 3, and yes, it does involve a train, but not too much terror. The opening has to do with the Claw's latest henchman, Tanaka, who has blood-red eyes that are extremely light-sensitive but do nothing special, stealing a state-of-the-art laser robot.
Whoa, that's a scary-looking thing. What does it do?
Everything.
Through some other shenanigans, Too Much gets kidnapped again, and the climax ends on a runaway train that has a bomb strapped to it that can't be stopped except by Chuck. Also, Terror Train has one of the best moments in the entire series when Norris commandeers a civilian vehicle.
Hey, That's my bike.
Sorry, guys, this is an emergency. I'm Chuck Norris. Contact me through the American Embassy.
Americans.
To further demonstrate Chuck's awesomeness, not only does he board a jet in midair, but he ejects out of the plane without a parachute, and later fights with Super Ninja on a tightrope suspended from a speeding train and a parallel racing car. If that weren't enough, our heroes are also captured and thrown into a jail cell filling up with water and snakes. Even after they escape, they have to ski down a mountain while being chased by a giant laser. Talk about that 80s extreme attitude to the max. In Menace from Space, Chuck and the team are assigned to guard the launch of the space shuttle Invincible that of course the Claw is after. To help him this time, the Claw uses special guest villain Croc, who aside from having a very slithery voice, employs a horde of crocodiles to do his bidding.
Splendid, Super Ninja. Let's do it.
They might be alligators for all we know, but since his name is Croc, I'm assuming they're crocodiles.
Not even a fly, huh?
Super Ninja is able to actually hijack the space shuttle, which he enters while it's blasting off. With the Invincible under his control, Claw plans to launch laser attacks from outer space and destroy the cities of the world.
The world will remember this day!
So as Chuck and the gang try to track down Croc to lead them to the Claw, they get to wrestle with gators in the swamp, and then eventually make their way to the Arctic and Claw's secret submarine, which bursts up out of the ice right in front of them.
I thought you'd be glad to see me.
The world will pay dearly for this.
Not if we can help it.
Again, because this show has what seems like cocaine-fueled writing habits, none of this was enough. So now Chuck has to use an antique museum space shuttle to fly into outer space, board the Invincible, fight a barrage of goons, and put a stop to the Claw's plans. Honestly, it's exhausting to even try and describe these episodes at a certain point.
We'll get a spaceship.
And where are we going to find one in Alaska?
Anchorage.
Island of the Walking Dead is the fifth and final episode and begins routinely enough with Tabi eating a giant sub sandwich. This is interrupted by Super Ninja's arrival to destroy a special satellite tracking antenna which the Claw needs so that he can bring another satellite out of orbit so that he can somehow get control of the US military's weapons. It seems rather convoluted and confusing if you ask me. Regardless, the one satellite that the Claw wants crashes down on Voodoo Island. Voodoo Island is another Claw stronghold controlled by the Voodoo Shaman, who has an army of zombies to do his bidding. He also makes voodoo dolls of the team to incapacitate them, including Norris, when they try to intervene. The team gets captured by the zombies, but Chuck is able to rescue them and eventually retrieves the satellite and stops the Claw's forces. Did you expect anything less?
You guys okay?
Sure, Chuck.
For as bad as this show is, and I mean that with all the love and respect it deserves, it comes with a spectacular pedigree. Listed as creative consultants for the series are no less than three legends in the comic book industry: Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, and Doug Wildey. Jack Kirby needs no introduction as one of the preeminent comic book creators of all time, having essentially created or co-created almost the entirety of the Marvel Universe, as well as the DC Comics Fourth World mythology. For as genius and as integral as he was to the foundation of the industry, Kirby was never treated well by the publishers who profited off his work, and in the later years of his career found solace in the animation industry as a place for a steady paycheck. Perhaps not as well known, but a legend in his own right, Gil Kane was a consummate comic book artist whose career goes back to the Golden Age and worked on seminal runs of several key comic book characters, notably Green Lantern and The Amazing Spider-Man. And the name least likely to be known to general audiences is one I truly adore: Doug Wildey, best known as the unsung hero and essentially the creator of Johnny Quest for Hanna-Barbera. As I mentioned, Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos was part of a cross-promotional synergy campaign, so there was obviously a toy line, but only 9 figures were ever produced. 3 of those figures are Chuck Norris variants in different outfits. The rest of the line includes Kemo, Tabi, Super Ninja, Reed, and 2 generic ninja bad guys. Aside from that, there was also a 4-issue comic book miniseries produced by Marvel under their Star Comics imprint. They were written by Joe Duffy and penciled by none other than Spider-Man co-creator Steve Ditko. Although I'm not old enough to remember seeing this show during its first run, I do have fond memories of when it was added to the regular rotation of action shows on Boomerang back in the early 2000s, along with Mr. T, which had a lot more staying power on the network. And even though back then I realized that something was a little off with the show, I still enjoyed it for what it was. Karate Kommandos helped introduce me to Chuck Norris at a young age and spurred an interest in tracking down his movies as I got older. The series was finally released on DVD in 2011, which incorrectly places it in the Hanna-Barbera Classic Collection. However, given the stylistic similarities between Ruby Spears and Hanna-Barbera, it's understandable for casual audiences to assume they're one and the same. All in all, I think you can appreciate Chuck Norris Karate Kommandos from a different perspective. Kids can take it at face value and become mesmerized by its high kinetic, non-stop action and adventure. And adults looking back can bask in its irony and over-the-top ridiculousness, which makes the show an endearing classic in my book.
No doubt, Super Ninja. We'll meet again.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and we'll see you next time.